Right, so hello and welcome to the first of our Meet the Linden talks. I'm doing 3 talks a day throughout. At 12 noon, we have a Meet the Designer talk. At 2 p.m., we have Meet the Lindens. And at 4 p.m., we have Meet the Communities. And today it's going to be non-profits. You'll be able to see what's going on by looking at the posters outside. I'll be updating those each day so you'll know what's coming. Today, I'm delighted to have Patch Linden and Dee Linden with me, who I've talked to a few times before. I think we can safely say, yeah?
Yeah.
Once or twice, anyway.
Yeah, just in passing. So, perhaps to start off with, you could tell us something about what you actually do at the lab. Dee, would you like to go first?
No, I think Patch was about to.
Okay, Patch.
I can go first. I'm the Senior Director of Product Operations for Linden Lab. Specifically in Second Life, I work with everything that has to do with land, that stuff that's beneath your feet, in world and accounts. The other interesting thing that I work on is the support organization. So the entire support organization for both Second Life and Sansar actually also report up to me.
Wow. When you say support, does that mean that abuse reports come across your desk, or is it something different?
They may. That team is within support.
Right. But also if something breaks on the grid, that's coming across, presumably as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And fortunately, it doesn't break as often as it used to.
Gladly so.
I think we can all scare people who've come in since 2012 with tales of finding our shoes up our butts and treats like that, and region crossings that were complete nightmares.
I think my favorite was the missing image.
You mean when things would just come through grey?
No, this was actually a replacement texture for the gray. It was missing image. It specifically said that in black text on a white background.
So, Dee, what about you? Tell us a little about what you do.
Well, I work with the land operations team. We take care of the mainland, and we work with the moles, the Linden Department of Public Works, doing fun things like experiences that get released every year or so. Hi, Callie, thank you. And we recently rebuilt the shopping mall, which is where the birthday shopping is going on over on Golden, Gilded, and Halcyon. And we also do things like what I'm wearing right now. This is a little sneak peek.
Oh, wow. So, this is absolutely beautiful. I gather those are bento wings.
Yes, they are.
Okay, we'll probably talk a little about bento later. So, how do you get this outfit?
Everybody will be getting it soon. TM.
So, it's actually being delivered to everyone.
This and a few others will be delivered to everyone soon.
So, do we find them in the library?
Yes, you will.
Aha, right. I'm not sure how many people actually look in the library, but there's some cool stuff in there. And it does change regularly. Well, it doesn't change, but more things are added. Have you found that people aren't aware that things are in the library?
Sometimes I don't think that people tend to miss it. You know, the starter avatars themselves are curated from there in everybody's avatar and everybody's inventories. So we tend to actually see and hear a lot about folks talking about, you know, how they find them, and they actually do mashups of the different outfits together and stuff. So I think everyone's generally pretty aware of what's in the library because, you know, I think a lot of new users tend to go hunting in their inventories in general, and that's where they trip across it.
I must say that I found them extremely useful for filming, that you've got a nice core of different types of avatars, and you've really expanded that recently, haven't you?
Yep, we sure have, and that's what Dee's alluding to is the next set of new starter avatars along with a new carousel will be coming out pretty soon.
That's fantastic. Okay, well, we'll all have to keep a lookout for that. That's something now that the moles do, isn't it? That one of the things the moles do is make the avatars.
Yeah.
Because that's quite interesting. I mean, we think of moles as actually building bits of the mainland and the experiences, but they're also doing other stuff like this as well.
Yep, they're a pretty talented group, and they can pretty much tackle any content asks that we have of them.
Mm. So let me ask you a little about your background, what you were up to before you came into Second Life and when you came into Second Life.
Me?
Yes, well, let's start with you and then we'll go on to Dee, because Dee's going to sit there waving her axe at us.
Before I came into Second Life, what
There
was I
a
doing? Oh
time.
my gosh, that was so long ago. Once upon a time, long, long ago.
In another country, yes.
No, the same country and stuff. I actually have a background in retail management. In fact, district management was one of the last titles I held, and the company I was working for suffered the fate of unfortunate peril where they ran out of money and sold the company to one of our competitors, and the competitors came in and closed a whole bunch of our stores, and in such, my position was no longer necessary. So it was about that same time that I was looking for something else to do anyway, and I started to kind of get back into media and such, because that's what I actually majored in, was film production and such. So coming from FSU Film School, that's something that's always held an interest to me. And being here in Georgia, we're the kind of the Hollywood of the Southeast. We have a lot of very big production companies here, not even just because of The Walking Dead, but we have a lot of big studios here doing big movie productions and such. Have for a very long time, including going all the way back to Forrest Gump, being filmed here in Savannah. But you know, that's something that's always taken an interest of mine. And on top of that, I started kind of going back and studying stuff like graphics design. I have a long lineage of architecture in my backgrounds as well, through my family. My grandfather being the president of the AIA at one point in time. And it was the type of thing where I was kind of pushed to proceed and do something, and that's about the same time I also discovered Second Life. So that's when I kind of jumped in, was around that time. That's kind of where it all began. I had a fairly well-known, somewhat large male clothing business in Second Life, and you know what? Hey, I was always the type of person where it was like, if it pays the bills, it pays the bills, and I was happy with that.
So at what point did the Lindens tap you on the shoulder and say, come and join us?
It was back in 2007 when Blue Linden actually pinged me and said, hey, have you ever thought about becoming a Linden? Because I was doing a lot of SL Mentor stuff at the time. And I said, oh, you know, I thought about it, but, you know, I'm really busy with my store and things like that, and I tend to do the mentoring thing off to the side. And he said, well, you're really, really good at it. And in fact, when I talk to people and stuff, even about how I conduct my business and such in Second Life with my own store, they were like, you're super good with even your customers, and I think you might be a really good fit. So that's kind of where it all started.
Did you keep your store on? Because at that point, there were so few designers designing for men that it must have been a huge loss.
It did stay there. The you can I don't think my blog is out there anymore, but you could actually see about the time in which I was hired, because my blogging went from, like I'm sure a lot of Second Life designers are, very frequent with their updates, on almost a weekly basis, some of them daily, some of them every 3 days or something like that. I was on an every week release cycle with new product. And you could see I went from like every week to like every 3 weeks to like nothing. Within like a couple of months of me starting with Linden Lab. So it was pretty quick in which I found my time with Linden being consumed versus my personal time with Second Life.
It's a shame, but I mean, your loss is our gain.
I thoroughly enjoy what I do, and I love doing what I do. So I have a hard time expressing it as like I miss that, but I prefer one over the other. I tend to not look back in that regard.
And do you get the chance to do some of the creation yourself now?
Oh yeah, when I have an opportunity where if the team's working on something, and if there's one item in particular, and you tend to see this a lot, and actually the direction that I give with us doing a lot of our teaser images and promo images and stuff that we tend to fly out on the grid or in the blogosphere and stuff like that at random. I work very closely with Ginger, as a matter of fact, to create those images, and sometimes I even will jump in on particular items like logo work and stuff, and actually, I'll crack open, Photoshop and go to work on it with them, and we'll go through iterations and stuff, creating something.
And blow the dust off it, and get onto it, yeah. So, have you actually gone as far as Blender? Have you actually built in mesh yourself?
I have a little bit, but not Blender and Maya. Say that 3 times really fast. I tend to tinker around with that in 3ds Max. So.
So you've actually kept up the skills even as they've evolved for people.
I can make a pretty mean coffee cup.
That sounds good. We always need coffee. We will always need coffee.
Yep.
Dee, if I can turn to you and ask about what you were up to before you came into Second Life, what your route was to becoming a Linden.
Sure. Oh, wow. That was, like Pat said, a whole lot of years ago. A few more years ago for me. I was a concierge at a hotel, and I worked for a realtor selling land, concierge being the team I was on prior to land ops, and of course, working for a realtor selling land and houses, like Linden Homes. So it all tied together there. Prior to those, I did online tech support for an IRC server and built-in chat clients, and occasionally would write some really bad documentation for it, because stuff would get really technical beyond my ability to word it. And so I would leave a note in documentation for my boss, and I told him, I said, look for the word doorknob. Anywhere you see the word doorknob, that means I need your assistance with the wording here. And, well, we kind of missed one of the instances of the word doorknob, and the documentation went out with that in there. So like I said, really bad documentation.
So if you find this problem, you must doorknob.
Exactly. It was my way of saying, here, it's your turn. Take a turn, turn the doorknob.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, didn't work out so well. But back in December of 2002, I got an email from some friends who said, hey, have you seen this Second Life thing? And I went, Second Life thing? So I went and checked it out, and there was a closed beta application, and I filled it out because you never know.
Mhm.
And I did get an invitation the next day. So this was in December. This was December 3rd of 2002.
Wow.
And yeah, and I logged in, and it's like, whoa, this is cool. This is kind of like The
Mhm.
Sims, but cooler. This is before The
Mm.
Sims were even online, right?
Mhm.
And so I think it was about December 4th that I started dropping a note card of my resume on every Linden that I met. Yeah, because I knew I had to be part of this.
Right. So you came in and you were working on. Hello, we've got someone coming to join us. Sorry, something away. So, what did you come in when you first came in? What were you actually? Did you set up a store or anything before you became a Linden?
No, I mostly hosted events
Mhm.
and did some mentoring as Patch did.
That seemed to be the way forward for several people becoming Lindens, because they were involved with working with the residents in general, mentoring them.
Yeah, definitely. And it was always a lot of fun getting other people excited about Second Life.
Yes. So, did you persuade many friends to join, or was it sort of seen as something you did yourself?
Quite a few of my friends joined. Yeah.
Mm. Because, yes, and building up a kind of friendship network in Second Life is really important.
Well, especially back then when we had ratings.
Of course. Oh, yes. I can remember the ratings, although they weren't really very important by my time. But can you explain for people who are newer and who didn't come across the ratings what they were?
Absolutely. You could rate people. And it was basically a popularity contest, but yeah, you could rate them up or down. Um, and I'm trying to remember the different categories. There was building, so people would get rated on, and you could see it on each other's profiles, who's got the most votes or ratings on them. So who was the best builders? And Patch, do you remember the different rating categories?
I don't. It has been so
I'm
long.
I am blanking out completely on them now, but there were like 3 to 5 categories that you could rate people on, and you could rate them
Mm.
up or down, but it cost you to rate them down. A lot of weird things cost you in those days. Teleporting cost you in those days.
Yeah.
Um, Resing prims cost you in those days. Um, and you'd get charged tax each week that you had them resed out. So you didn't leave prims out all the time if you weren't needing them. It was a way of keeping things a little cleaner.
Right. I, I, I could. Oh gosh, if you tried to reintroduce that now, I think there'd be an outright revolution here. If people were required to dismantle their houses each week to avoid to avoid a tax. When was that abandoned? When did the kind of land tax stop, or the prim tax? Can you remember?
That was goodness. Was that late 2004?
I think so. Yeah.
Wasn't there a kind of protest about it? On the other hand, I mean, everyone
Well, sure.
protested.
I remember there were protests about that. There were protests about telehubs going away.
Hmm.
Um, Plenty of protests.
The telehubs, you had to TP into a telehub, didn't you? You couldn't kind of just TP anywhere in a region.
Yeah, it was actually a fairly ingenious design for, I think, the starting days of Second Life.
Hmm.
It is what I typically refer to as forced social immersion. Um, and that's interesting because if you think about it, um, where did everybody tend to, and sometimes still do, tend to kind of conglomerate to socialize? And
Hmm.
especially on the mainland, and it's around this concept of these telehubs, right? All of the land around the telehubs, when land was available to be purchased, was more valuable around the telehubs, and that was because that's where everybody kind of landed, and then from there went outward and explored the spaces surrounding the telehubs.
Hmm.
Interesting things came from that too, like avatar funnels. Um, I remember those from back in the
Avatar
day. They were,
funnels. What?
yep,
What were avatar funnels?
they were a little annoying. People kind of caught on to this notion that in order for you to get from point A to B, you had to teleport to the nearest telehub, and then you had to fly, walk, drive, whatever the case may be, your favorite mode of transportation to get to your ultimate end destination. Well,
Hmm.
what people figured out was that people tended to fly, more than anything. So
Right.
they would build these large invisible prim funnels so that if your avatar kind of was flying along and caught one of these things, you would then fly down and into the bottom of the shop or whatever it was that they had,
Right.
maybe down at the ground level.
So,
So it was things like that. Yeah, I kind of miss them in a way because it kind of made people go from a common point where socialization and stuff was really kind of born in its infancy within Second Life, and that kind of unique community bunching feeling that happened around those telehubs, and then forced you to kind of spread out and explore on your own. So there's benefits, pros and cons to it both ways, but it was one of the kind of the really unique things that I always kind of appreciated for Second Life back from the early days.
so that was pretty much on mainland. There are still some of the old telehubs out there, aren't there?
Yeah, well, I mean, today, I mean, they're still all over the place. We still have, like Ahern, Waterhead, all of those were telehub locations,
Mm.
and we now call them just hubs typically,
Mm.
and so they're still all there, pretty much memorialized, and we've been doing some interesting things around them, and may continue to do some interesting things around them going forward.
Oh, so what sort of things? Can I ask?
Well, well,
You
Yes.
can
you can
ask.
ask.
Can you tell me?
I will say that as we can probably guess, they're getting a little old, and some of them need a little bit of work. Over time. I'm a firm believer in prim rot. There is a such thing. Um, stuff
Yes.
happens over
Prim.
time. Yeah,
Yes.
prim drift, prim rot. You sometimes even get the same thing out of terrain levels and stuff like that.
Mm.
Uh, you know, Over time, sometimes content is unfortunately displaced, lost. Something changes with it.
Mm.
Something stops working, and we're looking at addressing that.
That would be cool. My particular one that I would love to see kind of tweaked a bit would be Vengen. The whole kind of ski lift area over in the snow regions, um, with places like Vengen where the ski lifts don't work so well anymore, and you have to walk up before you can ski down.
Well,
I'd
you
love
just
to
have
see
to let
that.
us know when they're having a problem because I was just on them last week, and they
Oh,
were working
brilliant!
fine.
Oh, good, good. I haven't been over for a while. Perhaps they've been repaired. That would be brilliant. I will spread the word. So, what projects would you say have been your favourites that you've worked on?
Oh goodness.
Or possibly which have you found most challenging, if you prefer?
Well, I mean, as far as favorites, uh, it was Paleo Quest,
Mm-hmm.
Learning Island, and Social Island. I think rank right up there with it. Again, coming from kind of the whole mentor, I like to help people. I walk in the residents' shoes every day. Sort of perspective that I put on all of our projects. I'd have to say that one's very important to me as well. The For the Portal Park would be my third favorite.
I love PaleoQuest. It's just so beautifully done. I mean, I've never got through it yet. I need to.
Yeah, as far as most challenging, I would say Linden Realms. It's the grandfather of the experience key system. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, it is basically what experience tools were built upon / and alongside of or in parallel with developed for. We basically set out to say, if we were to try to give people a way to create games or to put a gaming engine creation tool within Second Life, what would we do? And out of that was born both experience tools, the tool set, and Linden Realms at the same time as a demonstrator for it. So the interesting thing about that is that over all of the years that it's been running, it actually is still one of the most popular experiences. So we want to make sure that it doesn't break down, and with that, we also have to have the agility to respond to any kind of changes and such to the tool set that it runs on, as that may occur. So keeping up with all of that, I think over the years has probably been the primary challenge with it, because just short of rewriting the whole thing or scrapping it, we've found some pretty interesting, unique ways to keep it going.
New levels of sticky tape.
Mm-hmm.
So Dee, what about you? What have been the projects that you've loved?
Linden Realms will always hold a very special place in my heart. It was one of the first big ones that I worked on. Linden Homes as well, the originals. Paleo Quest is still my favorite to play. And Horizons, I think, was probably the most challenging of the more recent ones.
What was particularly challenging about it?
Well, unlike Linden Homes, with Horizons parcels, you can deed your parcel into your group, and we had to make the mailbox and the houses work for the group, where we didn't have to worry about that with Linden Homes.
Wow, yes. Yes, I could see that adds a whole level of complexity. Because, of course, you can't really run a commercial business out of a Linden home, can you? But you can out of Horizons.
Correct.
Have you found many people have set up businesses there, or has it become mostly a residential area?
There are quite a few businesses there, but I would say it's still predominantly residential.
So, what are you planning for the future that you can talk about?
Me specifically, I'm not allowed to speak about the future ever. That's Patches.
Right.
What are we planning for the future? Well, there's a big experience that we're working on, another game. It's really big. Probably the biggest one to date.
And you can't tell us anything more about it?
No, not really.
Okay.
Did you see the gift that we're releasing for SL14B?
I haven't yet. No, could you res it here?
I don't think I have one on me, unfortunately. unless Dee
Right.
does.
I do.
But
Ooh, yes.
there could be something
Mm-hmm.
related to that. Um,
Okay, can we see it, please?
Let's see.
Oh, cute.
This is the avatar. I can get him to turn around.
Mm-hmm. He's very cute. Where can we get the gifts from, by the way?
There are vendors all over the birthday regions.
Mm-hmm. That
And
is so sweet.
here is the other part. Oh,
There's an egg.
it's an egg.
It's an egg. Is it going to hatch?
It is going to hatch.
But do we know what's inside when it does hatch? Okay, I'm hearing cracking noises.
Time will tell. So yeah, these both have something to potentially do with that.
Okay.
We've already talked about another one, and that's
Mm.
kind of the hubs and such out on the mainland. That's got some other tie-ins to that sort of project.
Right.
We're doing some interesting new things coming up with Learning Island and Social Island. Well, probably more Social Island than anything. We have a few updates we want to make, a couple of tweaks and changes. Again, with the way we built, and for those of you who have maybe watched the past Designing World shows about it, we built it to be very modular, very updatable, easy to change for us. It's now been running for a little while. We've gotten really good data out of it. And as we've gotten that data, we have made other tweaks and changes all along. We're constantly, keeping an eye on it. But there's always the longer tail data set, right, that you tend to go after it's, been out there 6+ months to a year. And so there's a couple of other little things that we're seeing now kind of in that long data tail that we think could maybe use a little bit of adjusting. And some new additions to it, stuff we've never done before, and some other things that we'd like to address with it. So that's some other stuff that we've got kind of in the works. Yeah, the big project though that's taking up the bulk of our time. That'll probably come out end of summer, early fall.
Right. Just around the time Designing Worlds comes back.
Might be.
We could be coming over. Right. I was going to say, have you seen much of SL14B yet?
I unfortunately have not. I was actually out of town all last week, and today is my first day back. I was going to go exploring tomorrow, actually.
What about you, Dee? Have you been able to see it?
A little bit. Not as much. I typically go out and do the exploring with Patch, so
Right.
had scheduled that for tomorrow.
Right. Yes. Well, I'm hoping to get out and see it because we will be doing a Designing World show about it when Elric gets back from Scotland, where he's moving to at the moment. So I was going to ask you, do you think you'll ever bring the mentor program back or live help? I mean, you talked, both of you, about being involved with the mentor program. Do you think you'd ever go back to having a kind of live mentor program?
Like volunteers? I never like to say no or never to anything like that. People didn't think that the Community Gateway program would be coming back, and well, here it is. The notion of bringing that program back has some interesting things to consider, and a lot of it is really around the scalability of, kind of, interacting with the volunteer corps in a worthy manner, along with, just keeping everybody together, at a larger scale like that. So like I said, I don't like to be the one that would say never, it won't happen. It's something that I haven't thought about recently. And, if people were to show interest or, really have some sort of a desire there, I'm always open to considering things. I've never not wanted to, put something out there and say, no, we wouldn't even think about it. I always like to take the merits of everything and consider it, whether it's, good, bad, or indifferent.
Callie is saying she'd not have been here without live help.
I think many of us can say that. I really do. And that's really what gave me the passion to want to go do it myself. Because I remember logging into Second Life for the very first time and coming across a mentor and them helping me out in an invaluable way. And that stuck with me forever, still to this day. And look at where it's put me. So, I think I can turn my clock back in my mind all the way back to that very first moment, and remember that person, and credit a lot of my being here to that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the first mentor who helped me was trying to advise me remotely and finally call me over. And when I went over, he was a centaur with a smoking jacket and a pipe. And I just thought, it's so cool being helped to do this by a centaur wearing a jacket, smoking jacket and a pipe. I love this place. I want to stay here. Yeah, and I'm delighted to see the community gateways are back. How's that going? How many community gateways are there now? Approximately
9, 10.
I think we've passed 6 for sure. I want to say we may be up to 9, and we have a couple of applications that we're working through in the pipeline now.
And because there's a thing about people being able to join and come directly into community gateways, aren't there? Or is that just with Firestorm? Or is it
No,
not?
that is part of being a community gateway, is that you offer the registration on your own website, and therefore that signs up through your website starts out in your gateway.
Something that I think quite a few people would like to see coming back, she says tentatively, is second names.
Surnames.
Yeah. I mean, audience, would you like to see second names? Make a comeback, surnames? Or... Okay.
It's kind of funny. I was just thinking about that the other day.
Because I think there's always been a kind of big movement for people. If you want to get through to us, guys, you're going to have to shout. If you just type chat, we're not going to see it. But I'm seeing a lot of shouted yeses. Yeah, I agree, Callie. I always think of Widdershins when I meet them as being... I always think of Widdershins as being kind of cousins.
So sometimes we hear the argument both ways, and I'm just kind of reacting to the surnames are like nobility comment. But in so much as I understand that completely, right? If you have a surname, it's kind of like, people recognize that, they know you've been around for a long time, et cetera, and stuff like that. But how do you think it would make the people feel who don't have them or didn't have access to them, for us to then bring them out And then how would that make the people feel who did have them in doing so? Would that maybe lessen that feeling for them?
I think there'd probably be, yeah, if you could choose to let them replace resident. But if you also kept the flexibility where people can change their names if they want, so that they can cover up their original name. I mean, I'm looking at people now like Dark Tiger Love, who is actually Dark Tiger Ditko as a legacy name. Yes, Kenny Lex Luckless has made the point that first and last names are also secure login.
Interestingly, from a technical perspective, as far as Second Life is concerned, the ability to change a name is actually very difficult. And to give people a way to change a name would be a super deep project as far as engineering efforts are concerned. Faster, easier would be the ability to just give you the ability to choose a last name on registration again, right? But then, of course, that kind of is unattractive because, as many of us have very well built out inventories on our avatars and such with, many non-transferable goods in a lot of cases. You can't move your inventory around between your accounts, right? So it then becomes unattractive to want to create a new account just to secure, the coveted last name or surname type account, versus being able to change it. So yeah, the request I sometimes tend to hear is, can we change our last names, or can you give us the ability to change our last names from resident to an actual last name? And the answer we typically hit is with extreme difficulty. That at some point it could be done. Engaging the level of interest on driving something like that is sometimes a challenge.
Because I think many people, if told to choose between a last name and their inventory, would go with their inventory.
Oh, I can change names. Doesn't mean I'm not going to break everything else that your name touches in Second Life. I mean, I'll just be clear about that. That's where the engineering challenge comes in.
I guess that if we reintroduce second names, then the residents would be like a block of themselves, a rather large block compared with everyone else. They would at once become the Smiths of Second Life.
Yeah. Well, I remember back in the day, I had friends and stuff, join Second Life. And they would all kind of get together and be like, oh, let's all make sure we pick the same last name, right?
Yeah. I know that the two people, gosh, I can't remember their names. They're a brother and sister who run Seven Seas Fishing. Seven and, gosh, what's her name? Jenny. But they came in within like half a day of each other and picked Shiakumi, the same surname, because they thought that was the coolest surname going, and then they found they'd picked the same one. I don't know why were last names dropped. Was there a special reason for it?
So it was an earnest attempt by product. This would be before I was involved with product directly. To give people that ability that you just spoke of with display names, to give people the ability to, basically look like and have whatever named identity that, you could conceivably want. As I wasn't involved at that particular time, I can't really speak a whole lot to it, and what drove the particular decisions that were made at that time to, go away from, the surname type account naming system to a more unified account login. I do seem to recall that was some of the intent, like to kind of go with almost like a single sign-on type of a system. And to do that, introducing the uniformity was going to be one of the steps to kind of take us there. But outside of that, most of the people who were involved with that at this point, aren't here anymore. So what history I rely on is actually from me looking in from where I was at that particular point in the lab into it. So I don't have all of the information, I'm sure.
I had a question about inventory loss. That recently you've made some very helpful changes to prevent inventory loss, but is there ever going to be the capacity to back up the links to the asset server so that people can recover lost items, lost inventory?
Giving people the ability to download assets, I believe that's kind of what you're asking. It's almost like what has been, I think, said in the past by other folks. If you can see it on your screen, you can copy it. The same sort of bad things can happen if you can download them too. That tends to give and yes, Ziola is right. This is a really good question for Oz and Grumpity. But from my perspective, from a product perspective, to me it seems like a lot of risk. And going and doing something like that, potentially poses that risk that we may not be willing to take. And I'm going to actually address a question of why is it so difficult to let you know if we have a really good idea for Second Life. I'm not sure what channels you may have potentially tried to approach before, but I'm here. I like listening to ideas.
Okay. Hardcore has said, from an engineer's point of view, I and others have always wondered why Linden Lab has not looked into a 64-bit platform and removing the cross-platform.
64-bit from the viewer perspective, which I happen to be using right now, if that's what you're speaking towards. I'm actually in their 64-bit viewer right now. Server side is all Linux. It's all 64-bit.
Okay. Second Life needs more cowbell. Okay. When was it switched to 64-bit?
A long time ago.
Right. Which is presumably why one can run 64-bit viewers.
Again, probably a better technical discussion to have with Oz and Grumpity.
Because I don't have a clue. I did want to ask you something while I had you both here, and I was wondering a bit about the work that you do. I mean, Dee particularly, you work with a lot of not volunteers, but people who are doing voluntary work for non-profits in Second Life. How do you feel that that's something that we should maybe big up a bit, because there's some incredible stuff going on here, both in the fundraising category and also in charities that raise awareness and charities that offer, non-profits that offer support, and obviously things like virtual ability. I was wondering how you see that.
Um, I love working with the nonprofits, with those who are working to educate and fundraise, etc. Absolutely, anyone who has an idea for something like that, talk to me. My email is pretty easy to figure out. It's dee@lindenlab.com, or drop us a support case and say attention Dee Linden in it, and let's start a conversation if you're wanting to try to start something up.
That's brilliant. Because I know the pair of you have been very supportive of things. You've been really helpful with 1 Billion Rising, Dee, and I know you're both very keen on Fantasy Fair and do a lot for Fantasy Fair, which is brilliant. But other non-profits as well. Shall we go to some of the audience questions? How do you see your roles changing as Sansar approaches public release? Can you say anything about how you expect your attention to be divided, if at all, between the two platforms?
Well, I'm already pretty much where I'm more than likely going to be throughout the launch of Sansar, and probably for the foreseeable future. I'm not changing my investment of time into Second Life from a product, land, and account perspective. And with that, also having support in my umbrella for both Second Life and Sansar. There's a portion of my time that's going to go specifically to Sansar's support team, with the assistance, of course. I'll have a manager and a good team there to help me with that. But that's it. I'm positioned where I intend to be for some time going forward now. So really for me, I'm not expecting any drastic changes from where I am today. I still intend to devote as much time to Second Life as I do today, just like I do to Sansar, which is a portion of that time.
And Dee, will your focus be mainly on Second Life?
My focus should be 100%, or at worst 95% Second Life.
That's brilliant. I mean, since Sansar came on the horizon, so many great things have happened in Second Life. I think things like Experience and Bento are a great answer to people who've said that, they thought were worried about everything going to Sansar. But we're celebrating Second Life's birthday, so we don't want to go too far into Sansar here. And besides which, you are Second Life focused mainly, aren't you?
Yeah, like I said, I have the unique perspective of seeing both, and working with both. I have a lot of experience with Sansar as well. I have to, because the support team that reports to me is supporting and will be supporting those users as well. So I have to pretty much know it like the back of my hand too.
It's quite demanding. Hardcore's got a question. Will Linden Lab ever set up regions for non-profit awareness or groups? I guess kind of like non-profit commons runs at the moment, although those are going away.
Well, someone who wants to take on the responsibility of running them would simply need to contact me, and let's have a discussion about it.
Because it could be quite cool to have something a bit like the LEA for non-profits. But yeah, certainly a discussion worth having there. Thanks, Hardcore. We're getting a few questions about Sansa here. But like I say, focusing on Second Life here. Wondering if there are any plans to bring back the Lab Chat show after SL14B and have it more regularly. Well, speaking as someone who's involved in Lab Chat, we have been doing quite a few Linden shows on designing worlds. But Ciola would probably be the person to ask about Lab Chat. Right.
Yep, Ziola, and I can say that I'm more than happy to volunteer and do them if that were the case.
Okay. Right, so I'd just like to ask Dee about your outfit. Can you do a twirl for us? Could you stand up and do a twirl and show it off fully?
Absolutely.
I've been dying to see it. So does it come with the hair and everything?
It comes with everything you see here.
It really is gorgeous. And those wings are stunning.
Okay, it doesn't actually come with the AO that I'm wearing at the moment.
Right.
There we go.
Although
This is the AO.
Standard AO is really good. Okay, we've got a couple more questions. We're at the top of the hour now. Can you take a couple more questions?
Yep, I've got time for a few more.
Okay. So Tati Morgana Deacon wants to know what really happens when you report someone and what do you honestly do with constant abusive players?
Well, every report is looked at and investigated. Everything gets touched. Behest, people's beliefs. I know that's hard to believe sometimes. You know, there's a big volume there of reports, and more times than not, what we tend to see or find is that reports come in with vagaries that are really difficult for us to handle. So and so said, I am a meanie face. Okay, what would you like us to do about that?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's a really big volume of that. But we look at them because that's how I know they exist. And I even have statistics, right? Because, again, governance reports up into support. Support is under my umbrella. So I oversee all of that. When there's actionable items, when there are things that are clearly in violation of the community standards in terms of services, and there is substance behind the report that we can actually follow and pursue, action is taken. And we have an escalating action pipeline. First offense, second offense, third offense, and so on. We go up the escalation metrics that we have built in-house. And that sometimes isn't fast enough even for people. And I can hear people hammering, but I've frozen my chat, so if people are responding to what I'm saying at the same time, I'm not seeing it yet. But I can hear the typing. But the fact of the matter is that everything's looked at, everything is touched, and we consider all reports that come in. So that's honestly what we do with it, and with constantly abusive players, karma. It will catch up to them. It happens.
Yeah, you recognise the names that are coming up again and again,
Well,
presumably.
like I said, and everything has statistics and tracking, right?
Hmm.
Our tools are specifically built to watch and track and monitor all of that.
Hmm. Well, Kenny Lex is asking who decides what is abuse. If 1,000 residents think it's abuse but Lindens do not, is it still abuse? Well, I guess if 1,000 people are complaining about it, that would certainly draw the eye powerfully.
Yeah, that certainly would. But it doesn't even necessarily take that.
Hmm. I know that a couple of times when I've been on regions that have been griefed, that's been dealt with really quickly as soon as I've filed an abuse report about stuff littering on the mainland.
Yeah, and the governance team gets out and talks to people. They have actually been, and like Ziola mentioned, they have been doing these kind of like in-world meet and greets and like how to file a report that is useful to us and things like that. They've been kind of doing their own version of like in-world um, kind of like meet the governance team type meetings and such. And they are more than happy to set them up and do them. So, if people feel like that they would want more of that and want to, experience that and such, I can certainly talk to them and ask them to do more.
Hmm. Inara Pay has also written a good article that's worth reading on the governance team. And how abuse reports work. That's great. Okay. People have been looking around for bears. Do you both have bears?
Yes, I've been
We
dropping my
do.
new on it. Everyone who IMs me.
You have a bear, a new bear. Oh, please.
No, not a new one.
Mine's new.
I saw my old
Today
bear.
is the first day I've given it out.
Wow. Thank you, Dee. Right. I know Eric says, I know it's a lot better than it used to be, but do you know if we can expect um, sim crossings to improve even further? Yeah,
A what crossing?
region crossings.
Region crossings? Are they to improve?
Improve more. They're much better.
Yeah. Oh, it's a statement. I was gonna say, yeah. I mean, there's always work that can be done there, right? The region crossing process, and again, this is maybe a Grumpy and Nas topic too, and they can speak to how incredibly complex it is. I didn't get kind of passionate about because I understand the complexity behind what has to happen when you cross the boundary between two regions, but. It's quite the phenomenon. In fact, it's almost magical that it works. And it's one of those things that I think I'm pretty proud of the engineering team and stuff to have had happen really as good as it does over all the years.
Yes, when I think of how I'm dragging my considerable inventory with me across region crossings, plus my 60 whatever groups with all their roles. Yeah, it's pretty good that I get across so quickly. Um, Tassie, that's an interesting question. Will the UK leaving the EU affect costs for us Brits in Second Life? Well, only insofar as our exchange rate is going to be screwed. I mean, we're not leaving the euro because we were never in the euro, but sadly, leaving the EU means that our exchange rate is going down against the dollar, which means that everything is more expensive if you're buying in dollars. And Second Life works in dollars. No, it's not good.
The big question on my mind, and of course, sitting here in the U.S., I haven't totally invested myself in knowing what's going to happen there. But I think the first thing that kind of comes to my mind is what's going to happen to that. The value-added tax stuff that unfortunately penalizes, I think, some of the residents, depending on what services they have from us. Like region ownership, for example, is subjected to that. And I tend to wonder what's going to happen with that.
Is it still? I thought that VAT had been lifted.
Nope.
Right. It has been lifted from a couple of things, though, hasn't it?
Yeah, I know there's been some changes. Again, not having invested a lot of time into, the specifics around the laws on VAT in the EU and such. I just wondered if it was, going to slant it at all, or maybe free it up a little more so that maybe we can make some beneficial changes to the way we provide our services and such. So
we'll have to see. I think we've got a lot of things we need to see about with Brexit. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions? Kenny Alex, we've really done the land question over and over again. Why is land so expensive? I think we've done this one before.
Yep, that's a good, long-standing old question. Because you won't give it to me for free. How's that for an answer? Premium accounts are actually a really good way to get into homeownership, even if it's from Linden Homes to just having a single parcel somewhere and such. It's actually a pretty affordable way when you are dealing with it at the annual account level, or if you can catch us on our quarterly premium promotional sales and such, where we mark it down 50%. You get that free land grant that you can use towards something on the mainland or a Linden home. And then on top of it, you get your stipends back on a weekly basis. And people who typically do the fast math on what an annual premium account costs against the stipends usually finds that you're sitting in a pretty equitable position of having almost paid for the account. That's actually something we're working on. And interestingly, if you forget to pay for your premium account, right, sometimes people have found themselves in a situation where their account becomes at risk for being canceled, and we're actually going to be dealing with that soon. Instead of it, perhaps doing something like that, maybe we'll go the direction of it just canceling itself out and saying, hey, you didn't pay in time, cancel the premium benefits. But the risk there is that there are certain things like more groups and those capabilities that you get with offline IMs and things that, you'll lose all of a sudden.
And you just kind of randomly lose some of your groups and then have to work out which you really want to.
Yeah, we're not that cutthroat about it, but you will certainly lose any free space that you had.
Right. That sounds fair enough.
Interesting, a lot of people also don't know that when your account goes into, and this is kind of the unfriendly term, but when your account goes into that kind of that arrears place, where maybe your billing method or whatever the case may be with your premium account didn't pay for it on its automatic renewal, that you actually have time. And it's actually, we're pretty nice about it. There's actually a lot of time for you to rectify that. You just have to kind of watch for the emails and such to come in and catch them where, it might say, hey, we failed to charge your, form of payment for your premium annual renewal or whatever, or premium monthly renewal. And you actually have a lot of time to fix that before it actually endangers your account.
That's good to know. Why do older premium residents receive a weekly stipend and newer ones don't?
They all receive a stipend. It's just a
Yeah.
different amount.
Right. So if we've been here longer, we get a bigger one for sticking around. Is that the way it works? I don't know.
So yes, back quite some time ago, there was a change in the rate in which the stipends were being paid. Way back in the old day, like for my resident account, for example, it was $500 a week. I think today it's $250.
Eric's got a question here. He warns that it may be too broad, and he apologises for asking so many questions. But for Dee, working with mainland as you have, how do you see the idea of a contiguous virtual continent as unique to SL compared to other virtual worlds you may have tried? It seems VR developers are moving away from that, creating individual experience.
There are other virtual worlds. I would love to connect all of the continents together and make it possible to sail from in between all of them. Unfortunately, that would take a whole lot of water to do so.
It would be difficult to actually suddenly wake up and find a continent had drifted.
Yeah, we could do that, but I don't think anybody would be very happy for a few days.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, well, do we have any other questions? Because Patch and Dee have very kindly stayed longer. Melody is asking, can I secure my textures so that no one can copy or steal them with forbidden tools?
Unfortunately, if you can see it, you can copy it to some extent. You can take a screen capture of an item with the texture on it, and it won't be a high-res texture, but it would be a copy of your texture nonetheless.
I think Lily's asking about people who've been banned and who are still in the Yeah. Um,
Our
I
review process is actually very simple. There's a specific case type you file. It is reviewed. Determinations are made, depending on what happened, and there's an outcome. It's really clean. Uh, you know, it's very hard to answer a question like that when not all parties have both sides of the story.
hmm. I think that always is difficult. And if you think there are people who really should be banned, what I would say would be to file abuse reports. If they're being abusive, and they're breaking terms of service, then file abuse reports and they'll be looked at. Okay, well, I think we're coming to an end here, so I'm actually going to say um, to Patch and Dee, thank you very much for coming here today and talking to us. It's great to talk to you two again.
Anytime.
Thank you for having us again.
And thank you for being here.